Hello, thanks for joining us on Talking Europe on France 24. Today we're shining a light on some human rights defenders as the European Parliament gets ready to vote on its highest human rights award, the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought. Now, this award was established in 1988, named after the Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov. It comes with €50,000 prize money. Each year, MEPs nominate and then choose their winner from among individuals or groups who they believe have made an exceptional contribution to the fight for human rights anywhere in the world. 5 of the 30 laureates have, in fact, gone on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So on today's programme, we're going to find out about some of this year's nominees and ask whether being put up for the prize actually makes a difference to their causes. With us for today's programme are French MEP from the centrist Renew Europe group, Bernard Guetta. Hello there.
Hello.
Next to you from the largest group in the European Parliament, the European People's Party, Ivan Stefanets. Hello. From Slovakia. Hi there.
Thank you.
From Spain, a former Justice Minister of Spain, Juan Fernando López Aguilar, with the Socialists and Democrats group.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And last but very much not least, Asita Kanko, Belgian MEP with the European Conservatives and Reformist Group. Hi there.
Hi.
Now, I'd just like to start off for you and for our viewers with a bit of a reminder of what this prize is about by showing last year's winner, Oleg Sentsov, a Ukrainian filmmaker. Take a look at our report.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin has labelled him a terrorist. But for the European Union, Oleg Sentsov is a symbol of the fight for human rights. In 2018, the Ukrainian filmmaker was awarded the EU Sakharov Prize for freedom of thought.
By awarding him this prize, the European Parliament is expressing its solidarity with him and his cause. We demand that Oleg Sentsov, who was arrested in 2014 and sentenced to 20 years in prison, be immediately released.
Sentsov was arrested by Russian forces in 2014 in the wake of the annexation of Crimea. He was charged by the Russian courts with plotting an arson attack on offices of the ruling United Russia party and of planning to destroy a Lenin statue in Crimea. Charges of terrorism he denies. He did take part in the popular uprising in Kiev over the winter of 2013 and 2014 and was also active against Ukraine's Russia-backed ex-president Viktor Yanukovych. In May of last year, he went on a hunger strike demanding Russia free all Ukrainian political prisoners. But after 145 days, he called off the protest to avoid being force-fed, having failed to gain concessions from his jailers. Sentsov was finally freed in August of this year and arrived back in Ukraine as part of a prisoner exchange. He'd spent over 5 years in jail.
Well, the nominations have now been whittled down to a shortlist of 3, although, as you'll find out, there's more than 3 people within that shortlist. I'd like to get our guests to give us a little run-through of who those nominees are. So we'll come first to you, Asita Kanko. You're nominating, or you're joining the nomination for The Restorers, which is a group of young Kenyan women. Tell us a bit more.
Actually, these are young Kenyan teenagers who develop an application to tackle female genital mutilation. You can use this application to ask for help, to seek information, to get rescued, and all kinds of things that you can do. And personally, I really believe in this, and I'm not the only one, because they were finalists for the Technovation Prize as well. So it's quite impressive. So recognizing their effort will put the female genital mutilation on the agenda, because every minute 7 girls are actually at risk. There are 500,000 women in Europe living with the consequences and 200 million victims worldwide. So supporting these girls is sending a sign that we can actually try to do something for ourselves, and they can serve as role models.
OK, and Juan Fernando López Aguilar, you're with the Socialists supporting actually 3 Brazilians.
That's okay. First of all, as to the Sakharov Prize, which is increasing in prestige as a renowned award by the European Parliament, I can only pay respect to every candidate outside, including, of course, those who have been put forward by the rest of the political groups. But we socialists, we have a choice. And this choice goes to Marielle Franco, Clodelis Silva dos Santos, and Chef Raoni. They are 3 Brazilian characters, all of them so highly committed to human rights, fight against discrimination, particularly women, LGBTI, Clodelis Silva dos Santos, Chef Raoni for indigenous rights. But Marielle Franco, that was a human rights activist who was brutally killed So it is actually a coincidence that we have a partial overlapping with the Renew proposal, with the Greens proposal, I'm sorry, which is also putting the finger on Marielle Franco as an outstanding figure of a human rights activist. And after all, there are 3 Brazilians. And we do care about deforestation, about the fight against deforestation in Amazonia, Green Deal, and the deterioration of the situation in Brazil. We should keep an eye on it.
It covers quite a lot of areas,
Yes.
the nomination from the Socialists, and as you say, overlap with the Greens supporting Marielle Franco. So Bernard Guetta from the Renew Europe group, tell us about your nomination, Ilham Tohti.
You know, first, I could also support all the contenders and specifically your candidate. Obviously, all of them could receive the prize. But why do I support Ilham Tohti? Because now 1 million of the Uyghur people are detained in camps.
And he himself is a Uyghur economist who's in jail currently, we ought to
Currently,
say.
for life. For life. And why? Because he intended to organize a real discussion and a real compromise between the Chinese and the Uyghur. And second point, the Chinese dictatorship is now the most frightening dictatorship because it's 1.5 billion people living under this dictatorship. And second point, this is the most modern dictatorship and technological. And now I do think that we have to name and shame the Chinese regime.
All right, well, finally, our last guest, Ivan Stefaniec. You, from the EPP, your group was supporting Alexei Navalny, the very well-known Russian dissident. He did not make it onto the shortlist of 3, but tell us why you were supporting his nomination.
Yes, we supported Alex Navalny because of his courage. He is the leading person of civic protests in Russia, and he is very consistent in that. So he did this organization of protests for many years. He has been under many attacks for his human rights activities. And also, by the way, in 2012, he was rewarded by Amnesty International, the reward of prisoner of conscience. So he is really consistent, and we thought that this reward, it would be not only his personal reward, but it would be appreciation for all the people in Russia who fight for democracy.
All right. Now, as you said, we're not here to argue about these nominees. As you say, there are, merits have been put forward for all of these people, many of them suffering, of course, as you said. But Asita Kanko, something stands out for me. Your nomination, The Restorers, this seems to be the only nomination that's not outwardly a political nomination. We've got dissidents and people who've been jailed as political prisoners from the other groups. Is that something that's important to you, that this is a non-political nomination in that sense?
I think everything is political. People's lives are political, but I understand what you mean. It's not party political, because you can. I don't understand why someone would be against the idea of stopping female genital mutilation. It's very dangerous. It's impacting the lives of millions of girls and women. And every year, 3 million girls are being cut. I've been cut myself, and the most awful part of it is that you can never recover from this. And I've been lucky because I could study, I could fight my way through. I met great people who really inspired me, and that's why I can be where I am now. And I would like these girls and those who are actually at risk now to also have the opportunity to run away from the threat and go to school, go to find a job, because when they are cut, the next step is child marriage. That's why most of us are cut when we're 5, and then you get the child marriage, and then you are too soon pregnant, and then you are confronted with all kinds of things. You cannot build your life, and this is stopping the development of countries. It's having a huge impact also on global wealth.
But that's the interesting point, I think, about the Sakharov Prize, what kind of impact it can actually have. We saw Oleg Sentsov, who won the award last year. He is now free from jail. And as we said, there's sort of more party political or outwardly party political nominations. How much impact can they have? For example, Jair Bolsonaro, he hit back very strongly at criticism from the EU earlier this summer.
Yeah, I would like to make the point that many of the Sakharov awardees have eventually become Nobel Prizes for Peace, which makes a link in this renowned sphere of prestige,
So
which
you
is
think
linked
it
to
can
the very idea
have
of
a
the
bigger
Sakharov Prize.
influence?
But I would also like to highlight that the S&D proposal, the socialist proposal, is not a proposal on dissidence against Bolsonaro regime or Bolsonaro government. It's about human rights activism. None of them is a dissident. They are claiming against the deforestation of the Amazonia. They are claiming for human rights, black women, favela residents, LGBTI, and indigenous rights. So they are causes worth fighting. Of course, I pay my respect to the restorers, but I insist that we have a chance here to make a point that links the fight for human rights with the Green Deal, with the preservation of the planet in a country which is subject to the focus of the whole world precisely because of the damage and the impact it's making on the preservation of the planet, Brazil.
But the fact of female genital mutilation is that it's something that is very invisible and taboo. And as long as you don't speak about it, you can never save the girls. That is the problem, and it's very global. It's two different
We all
fields,
paid respect to that
quite
cause,
complementary.
which is shared.
Well,
widely.
talking about the impact that the prize could have, for example, talking about China, it is absolutely staggering, more than 1 million Uyghurs in internment camps. It is widely reported, we've reported about it on France 24, but of course the Chinese state is almost impervious, it seems.
You know, China nowadays needs the support of the European Union in its fight with Mr. Trump. And so we have a kind of leverage on Beijing, and we got to use it. And second point, the European Parliament is probably, certainly, the unique institution who could now defy the Chinese regime.
Why is that?
Because no government would dare to do that. The United Nations would dare, so who?
So it's the fact of it being multinational.
Excuse me?
It's the fact of it being transnational body. You
Absolutely.
Think? Yeah. Ivan Stefanets, I'd like to come to you. Obviously, Alexei Navalny eliminated, as we said, from the shortlist. I'm just wondering what you think about after Oleg Sentsov winning the prize last year. Do you think that he was perhaps not kept on the shortlist because there might have been a sense that this was an anti-Russian prize?
It might be an effect. Last year, our proposal was winning proposal. This year, as you mentioned, it is not on the short list. But I assume there was some effect that this prestigious Sakharov Prize would not go 2 years in a row to the same territory. I do understand the global impact of this prize. And for example, now all other nominees are from different continents. So it shows also the European impact from geopolitical perspective that we do care about the development of human rights around the globe. I think that's a very important message that we spread our values and we are in the leading position from human rights perspective.
Of course, the European Union is criticised for human rights issues itself. Of course, the issue with migrants coming across the Mediterranean, so many hundreds or even thousands of them dying each year. There can be criticisms, can't there, sometimes, of perhaps some sort of hypocrisy of the European Union putting itself forward as a human rights defender while that kind of situation's going on?
It happens precisely because we care so much about fundamental rights, because we are a giant in that regard. And we do care for one thing, how the fundamental rights state of the play is within the European Union member states. That's for a start. But in comparative terms, the European Union is a beacon of fundamental rights respect and rule of law
more agree with you.
across the world.
I couldn't.
And besides, we are also a giant, and it's good that it's spread and known is a giant when it comes to humanitarian aid and development for cooperation for development. We're the giant, the number one. We multiply the total amount of money invested compared to Russia, China, and the United States altogether.
Let's make the comparison to with Russia and with even the United States, obviously. This is obvious.
I can just compare my life in Europe and also in this European Parliament to my life as a child in Africa with different opportunities and under dictatorship.
I was in Burkina Faso.
In Burkina Faso, without any freedom of speech. My first mentor, who was a journalist, was killed, assassinated because he was doing his work. So I am very grateful, and I can see the very big difference between having rights and not having them. And I think the European Union should continue being a champion on human rights and working together on this.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all very much for taking part in this discussion. Thank you for putting forward all of these various human rights defenders and activists around the world that you've been supporting. We will be finding out about the winner of the Sakharov Prize in just a few weeks' time, with a ceremony happening in December at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. So thanks once again to all of my guests for being with us. Thanks to you for watching. We'll see you very soon for more European news on France 24.